A Ukrainian drone strike has killed at least 13 people deep inside Russia. That's according to Russian local authorities. It's one of the deadliest attacks to hit the country in more than 2 years. Videos circulating on social media and geolocated by CNN show a massive fire and thick plumes of smoke near the reported attack site. It's near a major technologically advanced oil refinery, similar to those Ukraine has frequently targeted in recent months. CNN's Claire Sebastian is across this. So, Claire, obviously this strike comes as both Russia and Ukraine have been ramping up their aerial attacks against one another. What more are you learning about this?
Yeah, look, I think it's clear at this point, Christina, that deep strikes, these long-range attacks that both sides are carrying out have gone from a sidebar in this war to really almost its central feature. Ukraine in particular has been really escalating its attacks as its drone technology has improved. It got to the end of an announced 40-day campaign to target facilities, military facilities, energy sites. We've also seen warehouses targeted deep inside Russia, and is now clearly continuing with this as it's seeing results. It is very unusual to see an incident as deadly as we saw today on Nizhny Kamsk in Tatarstan, which is in southwestern Russia. 13 dead, as you say, including one child. They've declared a day of mourning in that region. It isn't 100% clear exactly what was hit at this point. The Russians are saying that Ukraine targeted residential areas as well as industrial facilities. That may be why we have this death toll. Ukraine's general staff came out and confirmed an attack on the Tenneco oil refinery in that town. So obviously hitting oil refineries is a tactic that we've seen for a while as Ukraine tries to target the key engine, essentially, of Russia's war economy. But I think, look, it is clear as these Ukrainian strikes do increase in frequency and ferocity that civilians are increasingly vulnerable. And this is just another way in which the war is being brought home for them. Obviously, the destruction caused by Ukraine pales in comparison to that wrought by Russia across Ukraine. We've seen them ramping up attacks, particularly involving ballistic missiles, amid, of course, a very well publicized lack of air defenses against those in Ukraine. Just last week, some 17 people were killed in Kiev and the Kiev region, with many, many ballistic missiles being used and none getting shot down by air defenses.
Over the last hour, air raid sirens and explosions have been heard in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. Officials say a Russian missile attack lasted just under 40 minutes and warehouses were set on fire. Zaporizhia and Mykolaiv were also attacked. Not surprising at this hour that, again, Kyiv, Ukraine in general, is coming under attack. We have seen this cycle over and over again. I want to deal with what we know about what Ukraine has been doing and what the different tactics are. They are now hitting deep within Russia. How significant do you believe these attacks are, especially given the civilian death toll that Russia says they've suffered in the last 24 hours?
Yeah, well, Paula, a couple of points. First of all, for perspective, the Russians have been striking military and civilian targets throughout Ukraine going back to February 2022 when they launched their major invasion. What's changed in the past year or so is that Ukraine is now developing longer range capabilities to hold targets in Russia at risk. And you have seen in the last 2 or 3 months, the Ukrainians focusing on, for example, oil refineries, which are legitimate military targets. The Ukrainians are trying to disrupt the flow of oil, gasoline, and diesel fuel, which fuels the Russian military machine. And it's unfortunate that people were killed, but they were killed working at a military target.
And that is understood. In terms of the long range plans, though, for Ukraine, what their actual goals are. The target, as you point out, was this Tenneco oil refinery. I mean, this is a significant hit for Russia, but what impact do you expect this long range drone campaign to have in terms of it actually changing the trajectory of this war?
Well, we've seen the campaign focus, I think, really on 2 sets of targets in the past 3 months. One is oil refineries, which, again, they're reducing the fuel that can be available for the Russian military. They're also bringing home to Russians that the war is having an impact on Russia. And that undermines Vladimir Putin's narrative. He's been saying for over 4 years now, this is not a war. It's a special military operation. It's limited. It will have no impact on you. And I think Russians now are beginning to understand that, in fact, this war will have an impact on them. You've also seen the Ukrainian campaign against the Wildberries warehouses. That's sort of Russia's equivalent of Amazon, but those warehouses are used to move military supplies to the front. And again, I think the Ukrainians see this as a way to tell the Russian population, this is a real war and it's going to have an impact on you unless Russia stops it.
Mr. Pifer, you know, you said that Russia has no magic bullet left that can suddenly win this war. But you have seen the destruction that they have done with their ballistic missiles and the fact that many times Ukraine has absolutely no defense against those kind of weaponry. I mean, I'll state a very fine point to you. I lived in Russia for 4 years, went to Chechnya several times to cover that war. I do not believe that President Putin will change his mind on this. So where are we? What gets us more to any kind of a ceasefire? Because we know how much the Ukrainians are suffering right now in shelters on those Russian bombs.
Right. Well, for more than 18 months now, there have been multiple proposals for a ceasefire. Ukraine has accepted most of those, the Russians have not. And I think the Ukrainians are in a situation where, and I was in Kyiv about 3 months ago, Ukrainians would like to find an end to the war. You know, they're weary of it, they would like to get it over with, but they're not prepared to capitulate to Russian terms, which amount basically to Ukraine's surrender. And so they're prepared to fight on until there's a chance of a reasonable settlement. The problem here is that Vladimir Putin still thinks he can achieve his goals on the battlefield. And I think the Ukrainians are trying to do now is to basically show Putin that he's wrong, that if he continues to try to win on the battlefield, he will fail. And the costs, the political, economic, and military costs to Russia are only going to grow. And you've seen it now in Russian casualties, almost 1.5 million Russian soldiers killed or severely wounded in action. You're now seeing it in the economic consequences of Ukrainian strikes on targets deep inside of Russia. So I think the Ukrainian hope here is to make this war so painful that Putin changes course and begins to negotiate in a serious way, which he has not done for the past 4 years.
And yet the price being paid by Ukrainian civilians each and every day is just so profound, given where we are in this conflict. Mr. Pifer, we'll continue to check in with you. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, no, it's horrible. But again, my conversations when I was in Kyiv as Ukrainians, it's a horrible price. But Ukrainians are prepared to pay that price because they do not want to live under Russian domination. And that's the point that I think at some point the Kremlin needs to understand.